I sat at Christmas dinner with my family after years of distance. As conversation turned to work, I casually mentioned my tech company's valuation. My brother Eric fell to the floor sobbing, while our mother stood up, face contorted with rage. "You stole his future," she screamed, pointing at me. Eric demanded I immediately sign over $15 million to make things fair. The dining room exploded into chaos as I realized this family gathering was never about reconciliation but about what they could extract from me. Growing up in our middle-class neighborhood in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, there were always subtle signs that my parents viewed my brother and me differently. My father, Frank, worked as an accountant at a local firm, putting in long hours during tax season. My mother, Diane, taught third grade at the elementary school, just 3 blocks from our home. On paper, we were the picture-perfect American family. Hard-working parents, 2 boys, and a golden retriever named Scout. But beneath that veneer lay a dynamic I couldn't name until much later in life. From our earliest years, my younger brother Eric received a different kind of attention. When Eric turned 8, my parents transformed our backyard into a carnival complete with rented games, a cotton candy machine, and even a small petting zoo. 30 kids from his class attended. For my 8th birthday 2 years earlier, I'd received new sneakers and a practical backpack for school. Eric is more sensitive, my mother would explain when I questioned these disparities. He needs extra support to thrive. This explanation followed us throughout childhood. When I brought home straight A's, my father would nod appreciatively, but without much fanfare. "That's what we expect from you, Cornell. You've always been the self-sufficient one." But when Eric managed to pull a C+ in English after nearly failing, my parents took him out for ice cream and bought him the new video game console he'd been begging for. "Positive reinforcement," my mother explained. "Eric responds better to encouragement than pressure." I threw myself into academics and extracurriculars, partly out of genuine interest, but also seeking some measure of acknowledgement. I joined the debate team, ran track, and spent weekends volunteering at the local science museum. While Eric struggled to maintain minimum grades to stay on the soccer team, I was building a resume that would eventually open doors. In junior year, I developed a modification to a standard laboratory procedure for my science project. The innovation caught the attention of the state science fair judges. The competition fell on the same weekend as Eric's regional soccer tournament, where he mostly warmed the bench. "We're so sorry we can't be there, Cornell," my mother said, packing snacks for Eric's tournament. "But you understand, right? Eric needs us in the stands. You'll be fine on your own." I won first place at the state science fair. The judge, a professor from Penn State, pulled me aside afterward. "Your parents must be incredibly proud," he said, looking around for them in the audience. "They couldn't make it," I replied, the practiced explanation ready. My brother had a soccer tournament. The professor's expression shifted subtly, but he didn't comment further. When I arrived home Sunday night with my trophy, Eric was sprawled on the couch, playing video games, while my parents watched from the kitchen table. "How was the science thing?" my father asked vaguely. "I won first place," I said, setting the trophy on the counter. "That's nice," my mother replied. "Eric scored a goal today, his first all season." The conversation immediately pivoted to a detailed replay of Eric's moment of glory, my achievement already fading into the background. I was 17 when I found the acceptance letter from Stanford University in our mailbox. Full academic scholarship. My hands trembled as I read it over and over, barely believing the opportunity before me. For once, my hard work had paid off in a way even my parents couldn't minimize. That evening, I waited until dinner to share my news. Before I could speak, my father cleared his throat. "We need to talk about college plans," he said seriously. "Cornell, we've had to make some difficult financial decisions." My mother reached for his hand supportively. Eric's private school tuition has been substantial, especially after his challenges at the public high school. Eric had been expelled 3 times, each offense more serious than the last. After the third incident involving vandalism of school property, my parents had enrolled him in Greenwood Academy, an expensive private school known for its individualized approach to troubled students. "We've had to use your college fund to cover Eric's educational needs," my father continued. "He requires specialized attention that costs more. You understand, right? You've always been so capable." I sat there, Stanford acceptance letter burning a hole in my pocket. "What about my education?" I finally asked. "The community college has an excellent computer program," my mother offered brightly. "And you can live at home to save on expenses." "You'll figure it out," my father added with a dismissive wave. "Eric needs these special opportunities. He's not as resilient as you are." I pulled out my Stanford letter and placed it on the table. I got a full scholarship. There was a momentary silence before my mother said, "Well, that's nice, honey. See? We knew you'd be fine on your own." Neither of them asked about Stanford's prestige or congratulated me on the scholarship. Instead, my mother turned to Eric. "Would you like more potatoes, sweetie?" That night, lying in bed, I finally named what I'd always felt but never acknowledged. In our family, Eric was the golden child. I was just expected to orbit around his needs. Stanford wasn't just an educational opportunity. It was my escape route. The Stanford scholarship covered tuition and basic housing, but little else. While most of my peers received care packages and spending money from home, I worked 3 separate jobs to cover textbooks, food beyond the meal plan, and basic necessities. Monday and Wednesday evenings, I assisted in the computer lab. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I waited tables at a campus cafe. Weekends found me doing tech support for a local business, troubleshooting networking issues and setting up systems. Between shifts, I maintained my grades and tried to absorb every opportunity the university offered. The grueling schedule taught me discipline and time management. I learned to function on 5 hours of sleep and to study during 10-minute breaks between classes. I became the guy who could fix anything technical, earning both gratitude and connections across campus. Meanwhile, back in Pennsylvania, Eric had dropped out of the expensive private college my parents had stretched themselves thin to afford. He lasted exactly 1 semester before deciding the academic environment wasn't stimulating enough. My mother related this over one of our increasingly rare phone calls, as though Eric had made some profound philosophical choice rather than failing all his classes. "He's taking time to find himself," she explained. "Your father and I think it's important to support his journey of self-discovery." This journey apparently required a new car, which my parents purchased for Eric to help him explore opportunities. The monthly payments strained their budget further, but as my mother explained, Eric needs reliable transportation to find his path. I graduated from Stanford with dual degrees in computer science and business. My roommate's family took me out to dinner to celebrate since my own family couldn't attend. My mother called that morning with apologies. "Eric's starting a new therapeutic program this weekend," she explained. "The initial assessment is really critical, and we need to be there for the family portion." I understood the subtext clearly. Eric's needs would always come first. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a mid-sized tech firm in Austin. The starting salary seemed incredible after years of scraping by, though in reality it barely covered expenses in the growing tech hub. I found an apartment with 4 roommates to keep costs manageable, and threw myself into learning everything I could about the industry. 3 months into the job, I returned to Pennsylvania for Thanksgiving. The family home had changed little, though I noticed new signs of financial strain. The delayed repairs, the outdated appliances, my father's increasing worry lines. Eric, now 23, was living at home rent-free. He'd cycled through 5 different jobs since dropping out of college, never lasting more than a few weeks at each. Currently, he was between opportunities and spending most of his time playing video games and meeting friends at bars. "He's networking," my mother insisted when I raised an eyebrow at his 3 a.m. returns. "Building social connections is important for his future." I might have believed this explanation if Eric showed any ambition whatsoever. Instead, his room was littered with empty beer cans, and his conversations revolved around fantasy football and complaints about potential employers who just didn't get his potential. The revelation came during a conversation with my father the night before I was set to return to Austin. I found him at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills, his calculator nearby. "Everything okay, Dad?" I asked, noticing the deep worry lines in his forehead. He sighed heavily, removing his reading glasses to rub his eyes, just trying to figure out some financial matters. I glanced at the papers spread across the table. Mortgage refinancing documents, credit card statements with alarming balances, collection notices. "What's going on?" I asked, taking a seat across from him. After some hesitation, my father revealed that they had remortgaged the house to pay off Eric's gambling debts and maxed out credit cards. Apparently, my brother had accumulated nearly $40,000 in debt through online poker and impulsive spending. "We couldn't let him face those collectors," my father explained wearily. "He wasn't equipped to handle that kind of pressure." "What about your retirement?" I asked, noticing the statements showing withdrawals from their accounts. My father's face hardened. "Family comes first, Cornell. Sometimes sacrifices need to be made." My mother entered the kitchen, catching the tail end of our conversation. "Your brother made some mistakes," she said defensively. "Everyone deserves a second chance. This seems like his fifth or sixth chance," I pointed out. My mother's expression changed instantly. "That's heartless, Cornell. Not everyone has your advantages. Eric struggles with things that come easily to you." "What advantages?" I asked incredulously. "I worked 3 jobs through college while you spent my college fund on Eric's education that he wasted." "You've always been jealous of the special attention Eric needs," my mother snapped. "And now that you're doing so well in your fancy tech job, you could show some family loyalty." My father cleared his throat. "Actually, Cornell, since you're established now, we were hoping you might be able to contribute to some family expenses. Just until we get back on our feet." I stared at them in disbelief. After years of prioritizing Eric, depleting their savings on his failures, and barely acknowledging my achievements, they now saw me as their financial backup plan. "I'm just starting my career," I said carefully. "I have student loans, and I'm living with 4 roommates to make ends meet." "But you have potential," my mother insisted. "Eric needs support now." I left for Austin the next morning with a clarity I'd never had before. My family didn't see me as a person with my own needs and dreams. I was either the self-sufficient one who required no support, or the successful one who should provide for others. There was no middle ground where I could simply be their son, worthy of unconditional love. The flight back to Austin gave me time to reflect on the Thanksgiving revelations. By the time the plane touched down, I'd made a decision. I would build my own success and protection. I couldn't count on family support. I would need to create my own safety net. My job at Microdynamics, a software company specializing in customer relationship management systems, was demanding, but educational. I absorbed everything, volunteering for additional projects and sitting in on meetings whenever permitted. 6 months in, I noticed a recurring complaint from clients. Our enterprise software couldn't seamlessly integrate with their legacy systems without expensive customization. The gap in the market was obvious to anyone paying attention, but the company was too focused on their established products to pivot. During team meetings, I raised the issue multiple times. "These clients need middleware that can connect different generations of software," I explained to my supervisor, Trevor. "It's costing them thousands in workarounds." Trevor nodded sympathetically. "Good observation, Cornell. But that's not our business model. We sell our system, not integration solutions." I couldn't stop thinking about the opportunity. Evenings and weekends, I began sketching out what an integration platform might look like. I wasn't looking to compete with my employer. Microdynamics catered to large corporations with deep pockets. My vision was middleware for small to mid-sized businesses that couldn't afford custom solutions. 3 months into this side project, I met James Turner at an industry conference. In his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and decades of tech experience, James had retired early after selling his cybersecurity firm. He now mentored promising tech entrepreneurs. Over coffee after a panel discussion, I cautiously shared my ideas. "The problem is real," I explained. "Small businesses are cobbling together inefficient solutions because there's nothing affordable that bridges old and new systems." James listened intently, asking occasional questions that pushed my thinking further. At the end of our conversation, he handed me his card. "You've spotted a genuine market gap," he said, "and you've thought about it more deeply than most would. Let's talk again next week." That conversation was the first of many. James became my unofficial mentor, helping me refine my concept and pointing out blind spots in my business strategy. He didn't want equity or payment. He simply enjoyed nurturing new ideas. "You've got something promising here," he told me after reviewing my prototype. "But you need a partner with complementary skills. You're strong on tech, but you'll need someone who understands sales and client relationships." As if by cosmic timing, Allison Parker joined my team at Microdynamics the following month. With a background in business development and a talent for translating technical concepts into client benefits, she quickly became the company's top performer. We often collaborated on client proposals, her strategic thinking complementing my technical expertise. After 6 months of working together, I cautiously approached her about my side project. "I'm developing integration middleware for small businesses," I explained over lunch. "Nothing that competes with Microdynamics, but something to fill a market gap." Allison's eyes lit up as I outlined the concept. She immediately grasped the potential and began suggesting target industries and pricing strategies. By dessert, she was effectively interviewing for a position in a company that didn't yet exist. "I want in," she said firmly. "I'll bring the client acquisition strategy if you handle the tech development." With Allison's expertise added to the mix, our evening and weekend project gained momentum. We established AdaptLink Solutions as a legal entity, with equal partnership stakes. While maintaining our day jobs, we developed the core product and began approaching potential clients in our networks. My personal life took a backseat during this period. I dated occasionally, but relationships fizzled when I couldn't match other people's time investment. Most weekends found me coding late into the night, fueled by delivery pizza and the vision of creating something valuable. One Tuesday evening, my phone rang with my brother's number. Eric and I spoke infrequently, usually only when he needed something. This call proved no different. "Cornell, how's it going, bro?" His false cheer couldn't mask the agenda behind his call. After minimal small talk, he launched into his pitch. A supposedly guaranteed successful business idea involving dropshipping trendy products from overseas manufacturers. "I just need some startup capital," he explained. "Like $20,000. It's basically free money once it gets going." "I don't have that kind of money available," I said truthfully. Most of my savings were invested in AdaptLink. "Come on," Eric pushed. "You've got that tech job. What are you doing with all that cash? Living like a monk?" "Building my future," I replied simply. Eric scoffed. Always the serious one. "This is a real opportunity, Cornell. Don't you want to help your brother succeed?" The guilt trip was so transparent it was almost comical. "I can review your business plan if you'd like," I offered instead. "Give you some feedback." "Forget it," Eric snapped. I thought family was supposed to support each other. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. 2 weeks after Eric's call, my parents appeared unannounced at my apartment door one Saturday morning. Between them stood Eric, suitcase in hand and sheepish expression on his face. "Surprise visit," my mother announced with forced brightness. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. "Eric's between opportunities right now, and we thought a change of scenery might do him good." The plan, apparently, was for Eric to stay with me just for a month while he networked in the Austin tech scene. My tiny bedroom in a shared apartment somehow needed to accommodate both of us indefinitely. As we unpacked Eric's things, my mother pulled me aside. "This is perfect timing, actually," she whispered excitedly. "Eric can join your company. You must need help with all your computer things." When I didn't immediately respond, she continued, "He's really interested in tech now, and you could train him. Wouldn't it be wonderful to work together?" I stared at her in disbelief. Eric had never shown the slightest interest in technology beyond video games. He had no relevant skills, no education in the field, and most importantly, no work ethic that I'd ever witnessed. "Mom, I can't just give him a job," I said carefully. "My company has specific needs and hiring processes." Her face fell instantly. "I don't understand why you won't help your brother. He's family, Cornell. Don't you care about his future?" In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what my parents expected, that I would carry Eric indefinitely, sacrificing my own opportunities to compensate for his lack of effort. That my success existed primarily as a safety net for his failures. For the first time in my life, I refused to play my assigned role. "I'm sorry, but I can't hire Eric," I told my parents firmly that evening. "It wouldn't be fair to my business partner or our clients." The explosion that followed was nuclear. My mother burst into tears, accusing me of abandoning family when we needed me most. My father, normally the calm mediator, turned cold. "After everything we've sacrificed for you," he said, voice tight with disappointment, "this is how you repay us?" "What exactly did you sacrifice for me?" I asked quietly. "You spent my college fund on Eric. I worked my way through school while you bought him a car after he dropped out." "That's different," my mother protested. "Eric needed those things. You were always fine on your own." "And I still am," I replied. "But that doesn't mean I'll jeopardize my business to provide Eric another opportunity he hasn't earned." Eric himself remained surprisingly quiet during this exchange, staring at his phone with studied indifference. It struck me that he had probably witnessed this pattern many times. My parents fighting his battles, making demands on his behalf. They left the next morning, Eric's suitcase repacked. My mother's parting words still echoing. "I never thought you'd abandon your family like this." The silence that followed was both painful and liberating. Weeks passed without contact. I threw myself into AdaptLink with renewed focus, channeling the emotional turmoil into productive energy. Allison and I secured our first major client, a regional healthcare provider struggling to connect their patient management system with newer billing software. The solution we developed saved them thousands in manual data entry and reduced billing errors by 70%. Their glowing testimonial led to referrals, and slowly our client base began to grow. "We need to decide about leaving our day jobs," Allison said one evening, as we reviewed quarterly projections. "AdaptLink is taking off. We can't serve these clients as a side project anymore." It was a terrifying leap, but the numbers supported the decision. We submitted our resignations the following week and moved AdaptLink into a small office space. Nothing fancy, just enough room for our equipment and meeting space for clients. The first year of full-time operation was a constant hustle. We took every meeting, pursued every lead, and worked 18-hour days when necessary. Gradually, we established a reputation for solving integration problems that larger companies wouldn't touch. Our niche was small to mid-sized businesses, with complex system needs but limited IT budgets. With success came the ability to expand. We hired our first employee, then our second. By the 18-month mark, AdaptLink had grown to 15 people, working from a larger office space in a renovated warehouse district. Our client base expanded beyond Austin to include businesses across Texas and neighboring states. Throughout this period, contact with my family remained minimal. Occasional text messages from my father, usually centered on Eric's latest ventures, or my parents' not-so-subtle hints about financial assistance. I maintained polite but firm boundaries, sending holiday and birthday gifts, but declining invitations that felt loaded with expectations. Through a family friend who still kept in touch, I learned that my parents had purchased a house for Eric in our hometown. He needs stability, my mother had apparently explained. A place of his own will help him focus on building his future. I wondered what financial sacrifices they had made for this purchase, but I didn't ask. Their choices were their own, just as mine were. AdaptLink continued to grow steadily, reaching a valuation of $4 million by our third year of operation. Allison and I reinvested most profits into improving our core products and expanding our development team. We lived comfortably but modestly. Both of us focused on building something sustainable rather than extracting short-term gains. On a Tuesday morning in April, I received an unexpected call from James, my mentor. "Cornell, have you seen the announcement from Integratech?" he asked without preamble. I hadn't. James directed me to a press release announcing a new company launching middleware solutions for small businesses. The founder and CEO was listed as Eric Jacobs, my brother. The press materials described Eric as a visionary technologist who had developed groundbreaking integration solutions. The company model, product offerings, and even the marketing language were strikingly similar to AdaptLink's. "This feels more than coincidental," James said carefully. Further investigation revealed that Integratech had incorporated 6 months earlier and had just secured seed funding from several investors. Their website featured case studies that paralleled our own, though with different client names. I was stunned. Eric had never expressed interest in software development or business integration. He lacked the technical background to create such products. The only explanation was that he had somehow accessed information about AdaptLink and was attempting to replicate our model. Through industry contacts, I learned that Eric had been approaching our potential clients, undercutting our prices significantly. When I mentioned this to Allison, her expression darkened. "That's not sustainable pricing," she said, reviewing the numbers. "Either they have a revolutionary cost structure, or they're burning through investment capital to buy market share." A deeper dive into Integratech's corporate filings revealed its primary investors: Frank and Diane Jacobs, my parents. They had liquidated their retirement accounts to fund Eric's venture, apparently convinced that he could replicate my success with enough financial backing. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My parents hadn't just continued their pattern of supporting Eric at their own expense. They were now actively funding him to compete against me. The betrayal felt complete. For weeks, I grappled with how to respond. Legal action was possible. There were enough similarities in our materials to suggest intellectual property concerns. But the thought of suing my own family was unbearable. Instead, Allison and I doubled down on what made AdaptLink successful: superior technical solutions, excellent customer service, and sustainable business practices. We accelerated our development timeline for next-generation features and deepened relationships with existing clients. We built this business on solid foundations, Allison reminded me during a particularly difficult day. Copying our model without understanding the expertise behind it won't work long-term. She was right. Within 6 months, we began hearing from former Integratech clients frustrated with unstable products and poor support. Our industry reputation remained strong, while whispers about Integratech's financial troubles started circulating. By the end of that challenging year, AdaptLink had not only survived the competitive threat but emerged stronger. We secured $15 million in venture capital funding to expand nationally, a validation of our business model and execution. The investment partners specifically cited our technical expertise and client retention rates as deciding factors. Meanwhile, I learned through industry channels that Integratech was struggling financially. Their aggressive pricing strategy had failed to generate sustainable revenue, and technical issues plagued their products. Eric had burned through my parents' investment and additional loans with little to show for it. I took no pleasure in this news. The thought of my parents facing financial ruin in their 60s was deeply troubling. regardless of the circumstances. But I had made my choice to build something legitimate and lasting. They had made theirs. For nearly 3 years, my contact with family remained minimal. I sent birthday cards and Christmas gifts, called on major holidays, but maintained emotional distance. I focused instead on building meaningful connections in Austin, friendships that weren't transactional, where mutual support flowed naturally in both directions. Then, unexpectedly, my phone lit up with my mother's number one Sunday evening in November. "Cornell?" Her voice sounded different, humbled perhaps. "How are you, sweetheart? We haven't really talked in so long." The conversation that followed was surprisingly pleasant. She asked detailed questions about my work, my life in Austin, even my friends. For once, she didn't mention Eric until I specifically asked about him. "Oh, he's between projects right now," she said vaguely. "But tell me more about this venture capital funding. That sounds impressive." After the call ended, I sat in my living room feeling unsettled. The conversation had been nice, the kind of normal parent-child interaction I'd always craved. But something felt off. My mother had never shown this level of interest in my business before, and the careful avoidance of details about Eric's situation raised flags. 2 days later, I received a text from an old high school friend, still living in Harrisburg. "Saw your parents at the bank today. They mentioned they might be visiting you for Christmas. First time they've left town in ages." It was the first I'd heard of any Christmas visit. I called my mother, who seemed delighted by my eagerness to confirm their plans. "We've been thinking about you so much," she gushed. "It's time we reconnected as a family. Eric will join us too, of course." As I hung up, pieces began falling into place. Through industry contacts, I learned that Integratech had completely collapsed, leaving behind over $2 million in debt. My parents were facing foreclosure on their home, having leveraged it to secure business loans for Eric's failed venture. The sudden interest in my life and business wasn't about reconciliation. It was about access to my success. The revelation about my family's motivations should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt a strange calm, the clarity of finally seeing a situation for what it truly was. Years of therapy had helped me understand that my value wasn't determined by my family's recognition or approval. I had begun therapy shortly after the Integratech situation emerged, recognizing that my family dynamics had shaped me in ways that required professional help to unpack. Dr. Marissa Collins, a specialist in family systems, helped me identify patterns of emotional neglect and the golden child divided by scapegoat dynamic that had defined my childhood. "You were parentified early," she explained during one session. "Expected to be self-sufficient while your brother was infantilized. Neither role was fair to either of you." These insights didn't erase the pain, but they helped me contextualize it. I wasn't unlovable. I had been assigned a role in a dysfunctional system. Eric wasn't merely spoiled. He had been denied the opportunity to develop resilience and capability. Understanding doesn't mean you need to subject yourself to continued unhealthy patterns, Dr. Collins emphasized. Healthy boundaries are necessary for your well-being. These boundaries were tested when AdaptLink secured $5 million in venture capital funding to scale our operations nationally. The investment made headlines in tech industry publications, describing our innovative middleware solutions and impressive client retention rates. Within days, my phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from long-silent relatives and former classmates. Among them was a text from my father. "Proud of you, son. Looking forward to hearing more about this exciting news." It was the first time he had expressed pride in my achievements, without immediately pivoting to Eric's needs. The cynic in me noted the timing, right after a public announcement of significant funding. I maintained polite but measured communication, thanking him for the good wishes but keeping details of the business private. When hints about family financial difficulties arose, I responded with sympathy but no offers of assistance. The boundary felt foreign, but necessary. AdaptLink's expansion brought new challenges and opportunities. We opened satellite offices in Chicago and Atlanta, hired specialized development teams, and created a formal management structure. Allison took on the role of Chief Revenue Officer, while I served as CEO and technical lead. By our 5th year, AdaptLink had grown to 85 employees, serving clients nationwide. Our valuation reached $15 million, a number that still seemed unreal to me sometimes. The small side project, born from a market gap observation, had become a significant player in business integration solutions. With professional success came personal evolution as well. Through a company volunteering event, I met Rachel Donovan, a nonprofit consultant with a direct communication style and infectious laugh. Our connection was immediate and refreshing. "You're successful but not flashy about it," she observed over dinner on our 3rd date. "That's rare in the tech world. Most successful founders I meet have their net worth as the first line in their dating profile." I laughed. Maybe I'm still catching up to seeing myself that way. For most of my life, I was just the reliable one who didn't need attention. This comment led to sharing more about my family background. Unlike previous relationships where I'd carefully edited my history, with Rachel I found myself revealing the full, complicated truth. She listened without judgment, occasionally asking insightful questions. "It sounds like you've done a lot of work to understand those patterns," she said when I finished. "That's not easy." "Therapy helps," I admitted, "and building a life that's intentional rather than reactive." Our relationship developed naturally, based on mutual respect and shared values. Rachel understood ambition but maintained perspective on what truly mattered. She challenged me when work threatened to consume too much of my life, and celebrated achievements without attaching my worth to them. With Rachel's encouragement, I established a scholarship fund for underprivileged students pursuing computer science degrees. The Cornell Jacobs Scholarship provided not just financial assistance, but mentorship from AdaptLink team members, helping young people who, like me, had to forge their own paths without family support, became deeply fulfilling. For nearly 2 years, my contact with family remained minimal. Occasional calls on birthdays and holidays, brief updates via text, but no deep reconnection. I knew through mutual connections that Eric's business had failed completely, leaving my parents in precarious financial circumstances. Their home was reportedly in pre-foreclosure, and my father had returned to accounting work despite being past retirement age. These reports brought me no satisfaction. Despite everything, they were still my parents, and Eric was still my brother. I didn't wish hardship on them, but I also recognized that stepping in financially would only perpetuate unhealthy patterns. Then, nearly 3 years after our last face-to-face meeting, I received a surprising email from my mother. Unlike her previous communications, which often contained thinly veiled requests for assistance, this message seemed genuinely warm. "We've been thinking about you so much, Cornell. Your father and I were looking at old photos yesterday and remembering how you used to build those incredible Lego structures as a child. You were always so creative and determined. We're wondering if you might consider joining us for Christmas this year. It's been too long since we've been together as a family." The invitation continued with details about their plans for a simple holiday celebration at home. No mention of financial difficulties, no hints about needing help, just a straightforward invitation to reconnect. I shared the email with Rachel over dinner that evening. "What do you think?" I asked after she read it. "Am I being paranoid if this feels suspicious?" Rachel considered carefully before responding. "Not paranoid, just pattern aware. Your family has a history of reaching out when they need something from you. But people can change, especially when faced with consequences of their actions. So you think I should go?" "I think you should decide what boundaries you need in place first," she advised. "What would make this visit healthy for you? What would make you feel safe and respected?" Her questions helped me clarify my thinking. If I accepted the invitation, it would be with clear boundaries. A short visit, a hotel room rather than staying in their home, and Rachel accompanying me for support. Most importantly, I would need to prepare emotionally for whatever might unfold. After considerable thought, I called my mother to accept the invitation with these conditions. To my surprise, she agreed readily to all of them. "We just want to see you," she said, her voice carrying an unfamiliar note of humility. "Whatever makes you comfortable." As Christmas approached, I found myself experiencing both anticipation and anxiety. AdaptLink had recently reached a major milestone, a $27 million valuation following a new round of funding and the acquisition of a complementary software company. Business was thriving beyond my wildest expectations. Yet as Rachel and I boarded the plane to Pennsylvania, I wondered if I was walking into another painful family dynamic, or if genuine change was possible. The flight to Harrisburg was smooth, but my internal state was anything but. As our rental car approached my childhood neighborhood, I found myself pointing out landmarks to Rachel. "That's where I had my first job, stocking shelves at the grocery store," I said, gesturing toward a renovated shopping center. "And there's the library where I spent most weekends." Rachel squeezed my hand supportively. "It's strange coming back, isn't it? Like visiting a foreign country I used to live in," I agreed. "Familiar but distant." We checked into our hotel first, a boundary I'd insisted upon despite my mother's repeated offers to prepare my old room. After freshening up, we drove to the family home, arriving precisely at the agreed-upon time for Christmas Eve dinner. The house looked smaller than I remembered, and noticeably less maintained. The once immaculate lawn was patchy, the exterior paint faded and peeling in places. My father's prized rose bushes were gone, replaced by low-maintenance shrubs. "Ready?" Rachel asked as we sat in the parked car. I took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." My mother answered the door with an enthusiastic greeting that seemed almost performative in its warmth. She'd aged visibly since I'd last seen her. New lines etched around her eyes, her hair now completely gray. "Cornell! And you must be Rachel." She embraced us both, ushering us inside. "Frank, they're here." My father emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His shoulders had a slight stoop that hadn't been there before, and he'd lost weight. "Good to see you, son," he said, extending his hand for a firm handshake before turning to Rachel with a welcoming smile. "We've heard so much about you." The house interior showed similar signs of financial strain. Furniture I remembered from childhood, still in place but worn. Walls needing fresh paint, outdated appliances. But Christmas decorations were displayed with care, including ornaments I'd made in elementary school. "You kept these?" I asked, surprised to see my childish handiwork still featured on the tree. "Of course," my mother replied. "They're precious memories." The comment felt genuine, creating a momentary confusion. This warmth and sentimentality didn't align with my expectations or recent experiences. My mother led us to the living room while my father returned to the kitchen to check on dinner. The conversation remained surprisingly pleasant, focusing on neutral topics: Rachel's work with nonprofits, changes in the neighborhood, a recent snowstorm. "Eric just texted," my mother announced, checking her phone. "He's running a little late, but should be here soon." As if on cue, headlights swept across the front window as a car pulled into the driveway. Minutes later, Eric burst through the door in a flurry of movement. "Sorry I'm late," he called out, shaking snow from his coat. Traffic was insane. My brother had changed less physically than our parents, though his designer clothes seemed at odds with the family's apparent financial situation. He offered me a quick half-hug before turning his attention to Rachel. "So you're the famous Rachel," he said with exaggerated charm. "Cornell's been hiding you from us." "Hardly hiding," I responded evenly. "We've been together 2 years." "Well, time flies when you're busy, right?" Eric replied with a forced laugh. "We all know how that goes." Throughout dinner, I noticed a strange dynamic unfolding. My parents and Eric exchanged glances frequently, particularly when the conversation approached topics related to careers or finances. Eric seemed unnaturally interested in AdaptLink, asking questions about our client base and funding rounds. "So this venture capital thing," he began casually as my mother served dessert. "That must be pretty lucrative, right?" "It's not about immediate payouts," I explained. "The funding helps us scale operations and develop new products. Most of it goes directly back into the business. But eventually, you cash out, right?" Eric pressed. "That's the whole point." My father cleared his throat. "Eric's been researching investment opportunities lately. He's very finance-minded." This claim was so at odds with everything I knew about my brother that I nearly choked on my pie. Eric had never shown the slightest interest in financial planning or investment strategy. His pattern had always been immediate gratification and minimal effort. "Excuse me," I said, standing from the table. "Bathroom break." As I walked down the hallway, I heard hushed, urgent voices from the kitchen. I paused, not intending to eavesdrop, but caught by the intensity of the whispered conversation. "You need to ease into it," my father was saying. "Not so obvious." "We agreed on the approach," my mother responded. "Make him understand his responsibility to family. Just wait until after dessert," my father insisted. "Once Rachel's gone back to the hotel, we can talk seriously." I continued to the bathroom, my suspicions confirmed. This reunion wasn't about reconnection. It was about accessing my resources. The warmth, the interest in my life. All a prelude to financial requests. When I returned to the dining room, I noticed something I'd missed earlier. On my father's desk in the corner of the living room lay printouts of tech industry articles. From the doorway, I could clearly see headlines mentioning AdaptLink's latest valuation and funding round. They had done their research before inviting me home. Rachel caught my eye across the table, raising an eyebrow questioningly. I gave a subtle nod, our pre-established signal that I needed to leave soon. "This has been lovely," Rachel said smoothly as dessert concluded. "But I should probably head back to the hotel. Early morning call with my East Coast clients tomorrow." "On Christmas?" my mother asked with barely concealed disappointment. "Nonprofit crises don't take holidays," Rachel replied with an apologetic smile. "Cornell, you should stay and catch up more with your family. I can take the car." This was another prearranged signal. If things seemed manipulative, Rachel would leave first, giving me space to address the situation directly without worrying about her comfort. "I'll call you a rideshare," I said, pulling out my phone. "Keep our rental." Once Rachel had departed with warm goodbyes, the atmosphere shifted perceptibly. My mother refreshed everyone's coffee cups, then sat down with an expression of forced casualness. "So, Cornell," she began, "tell us more about your little company. It seems to be doing well?" The diminutive description of AdaptLink, a business with 85 employees and national operations, was so transparently dismissive that I almost laughed. "It's not little anymore," I replied honestly. "Our recent valuation put us at $27 million. The reaction was immediate and shocking. Eric's coffee cup clattered to the saucer as his face contorted. Then, in a display so dramatic it seemed almost staged, he slid from his chair to the floor, collapsing in apparent emotional distress. "$27 million?" he sobbed, actual tears streaming down his face. $27 million? Are you serious? My mother rushed to his side, cradling his head like he was an injured child rather than a 34-year-old man. "It's not fair," Eric wailed. "I tried so hard with Integratech. If I'd had the right support, that could have been me." My father's face had hardened into an expression of righteous anger. "Cornell, do you have any idea what your brother has been through? The struggles he's faced while you've been off getting rich?" My mother looked up from the floor where she still cradled Eric. Her expression transformed from nurturing to furious in an instant. "You stole his future," she shouted, pointing an accusing finger at me. "You always had all the advantages." I stared at them in disbelief. "What advantages?" "You spent my college fund on Eric. I worked 3 jobs while he got a free ride that he wasted." Eric sat up, tears still streaming but voice suddenly calculated. You need to make this right. 15 million. At least 15 million. That's what I deserve for what you've taken from me. Taken from you? I repeated incredulously. I built my company from nothing, working nights and weekends while holding down a full-time job. You always got the breaks, Eric insisted. Everything came easy to you. The absurdity of the moment struck me fully. Here was my family, who had consistently prioritized Eric's needs over mine, who had funded his failed business attempt while expecting me to fend for myself, who had reached out only when they wanted access to my success, claiming I had somehow stolen opportunities from him. For the first time, I felt neither anger nor hurt, but a profound sadness mixed with certainty. This dynamic would never change unless I changed my response to it. I think it's time for me to leave, I said calmly, standing up. You can't just walk away from your responsibilities, my mother cried. We're family. Yes, we are, I agreed. And that should mean supporting each other's growth, not enabling dysfunction. I love you all, but I won't participate in this narrative anymore. As I gathered my coat, Eric's sobbing intensified. My father followed me to the door. Son, he said, his voice lowered confidentially. We're facing foreclosure, Eric's business loans. We guaranteed them personally. We could lose everything. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. But throwing money at problems hasn't helped Eric in the past. It's only prevented him from developing his own capabilities. So, you'll do nothing? My father asked incredulously. Let your mother and me end up on the street? I paused at the door. I didn't say that. What I won't do is write a blank check without addressing the underlying issues. If you're willing to consider family therapy, I'm open to discussing financial help with clear boundaries and expectations. I left them with that offer, walking to my rental car through gently falling snow. As I drove away from my childhood home, I felt an unexpected lightness. For the first time, I had spoken my truth without anger or defensiveness. Whatever happened next would be their choice. The hotel room felt like a sanctuary after the emotional chaos of the evening. Rachel was waiting up, curled on the bed with a novel and a cup of tea. That bad? She asked. Taking in my expression, I recounted the entire scene. Eric's dramatic collapse to the floor, my mother's accusation that I'd stolen his future, the demand for $15 million, and my father's revelation about their financial situation. Wow, Rachel said when I finished. That's almost impressive in its dysfunction. Despite everything, I laughed. It was like a badly written soap opera. Eric literally threw himself on the floor. What are you thinking about their financial situation? She asked more seriously. I sat beside her on the bed, organizing my thoughts. I meant what I said about being willing to help, but only with real change. They've been enabling Eric his entire life, and it's hurt everyone, including him. That's a compassionate perspective, Rachel observed. Many people would just walk away completely. They're still my family, I said simply. But loving them doesn't mean I have to participate in unhealthy patterns. We flew back to Austin the next day. Christmas plans altered, but spirits surprisingly light. I had set a boundary and offered an alternative path forward. The next move belonged to my family. 2 weeks passed without contact. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, my father called. We've been thinking about what you said, he began without preamble, about family therapy. The conversation that followed was tentative, but productive. For perhaps the first time, my father spoke with me as an equal, rather than as either the self-sufficient child who needed nothing or the successful adult who should provide everything. We made mistakes, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion, treating you and Eric so differently. We thought we were doing what was best, but we all played our parts, I acknowledged, including me. By the end of the call, we had a plan. I would arrange and pay for family therapy sessions with a specialist in family systems. If they committed to the process, I would help address their immediate financial crisis not with $15 million, but with enough to prevent foreclosure while they worked on longer-term solutions. The first therapy session was scheduled for the following month. I flew back to Pennsylvania alone, meeting my parents and Eric at Dr. Harriet Kennedy's office in Philadelphia. The 90-minute session was uncomfortable, raw, and ultimately productive. Eric initially presented his familiar victim narrative, detailing all the ways life and I had been unfair to him. But under Dr. Kennedy's skilled guidance, cracks appeared in this perspective. "It sounds like you've received a lot of support from your parents throughout your life," Dr. Kennedy observed. "Financial help, emotional backup, second chances, yet you describe yourself as disadvantaged compared to Cornell, who had none of these things. Can you help me understand that perspective?" Eric struggled visibly with this framing. "But he was always better at everything," he finally said. "School, sports, making friends. It came naturally to him." "Did it come naturally?" Dr. Kennedy asked, turning to me. "Or was there effort involved that perhaps wasn't visible to others?" This opened a conversation about perceptions versus reality. I shared how I'd worked intensely to achieve academic success, often studying late into the night while Eric played video games. How I'd practiced debate arguments alone in my room for hours. How I deliberately cultivated relationships with mentors and peers because I knew I couldn't count on family support. My mother grew tearful as these revelations unfolded. "We thought we were doing the right thing," she said. "Eric seemed to need more help, and Cornell always managed so well." "I managed because I had to," I replied gently, "not because it was easy." The most revealing moment came when Dr. Kennedy asked Eric about Integratech. My brother hesitated, then admitted what I had long suspected. "I never actually built anything," he confessed. "I hired developers but didn't understand what they were doing. I just spent the money on offices and fancy lunches with potential clients and other things." "Other things?" my father questioned sharply. Eric looked down. "Gambling, online poker. I thought I could multiply the investment quickly." My parents' faces reflected shock and betrayal. They had liquidated retirement accounts for a business that had been, essentially, a facade. "Why didn't you ask for help?" I asked Eric. "Not money, but actual guidance on building a business." He shrugged, unable to meet my eyes. "It was easier to compete than collaborate, to try to beat you than learn from you." That first session didn't solve everything, but it cracked open the defensive narratives that had defined our family dynamics. We agreed to continue therapy, meeting monthly in person and weekly via video call. Over the next 6 months, significant changes emerged. With my financial assistance, my parents restructured their mortgage and avoided foreclosure. But instead of simply bailing them out completely, I helped them develop a sustainable financial plan that included my father taking consulting work and my mother teaching online courses. Eric faced the most dramatic transformation. After initially resisting accountability, he gradually accepted that his approach to life wasn't working. With professional help, he was diagnosed with a gambling addiction and entered a recovery program. Most surprisingly, he enrolled in a technical training program, showing genuine interest in developing marketable skills for the first time. When he asked to meet for coffee during one of my visits, I expected another financial request. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions about how I'd built AdaptLink's client service protocols. "I'm not expecting to build a multi-million-dollar company," he clarified. "But I'd like to actually earn my own success, whatever that looks like." It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. My parents, too, showed evidence of genuine change. My mother called me regularly, but our conversations now included questions about my life and work without ulterior motives. My father sent emails sharing articles related to my industry, small gestures of interest that meant more than grand apologies. During a therapy session in the 6th month, Dr. Kennedy asked each of us to reflect on what we'd learned. "I've realized that true support means encouraging independence, not creating dependence," my mother said. We thought we were protecting Eric, but we were actually limiting him. My father nodded. And we took Cornell's resilience for granted instead of recognizing it as something exceptional that deserved acknowledgement. Eric's reflection surprised me most. I've spent my life being jealous of Cornell's success without being willing to put in the work he did. I'm not there yet, but I'm learning that satisfaction comes from earning things, not having them handed to you. My own learning centered on the power of boundaries. I've discovered that setting limits isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships, and that helping others grow sometimes means not giving them what they ask for, but what they actually need. Back in Austin, my life with Rachel continued to evolve in positive directions. We got engaged on a weekend trip to Big Bend National Park, planning a small ceremony focused on quality time with chosen family rather than extravagance. AdaptLink continued its growth trajectory, expanding into international markets, while maintaining our core values of excellent service and innovative solutions. I established a business mentorship program, finding deep satisfaction in helping young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds navigate the challenges I had faced alone. The most meaningful change, however, was internal. I no longer defined myself in opposition to my family's expectations or sought validation for achievements they had consistently minimized. Instead, I measured success by my own standards, the integrity of my work, the quality of my relationships, the positive impact I could create. At Rachel's suggestion, we invited my parents and Eric to Austin for Thanksgiving, a deliberate choice to create new traditions in a neutral location. The visit wasn't perfect. Old patterns occasionally surfaced, but the difference was palpable. Conversations flowed more naturally, with genuine interest rather than ulterior motives. On their last evening, my father raised his glass in a toast. "To Cornell and Rachel," he said, his voice steady with emotion. "Thank you for showing us that it's never too late to build something better," my mother added. "And for teaching us that true family strength comes not from depending on each other inappropriately, but from supporting each other's growth." Eric met my eyes across the table. "To second chances," he said simply, "and the hard work that makes them worthwhile." As I looked around at these imperfect people making genuine efforts to change, I felt a sense of peace I'd never expected to find within my family of origin. The road ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time, we were walking it with authentic awareness rather than unconscious patterns. True success, I realized, isn't measured in dollars or accolades. It's found in the resilience to overcome obstacles, the wisdom to set healthy boundaries, and the courage to build meaningful connections, even when that means reimagining relationships you thought were permanently broken. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't recognize your worth? How did you balance compassion with self-protection? Comment below and share your experience. Your story might help someone facing similar challenges. And if you found value in this journey, please like this video, subscribe to see more authentic life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that success is defined by character, not circumstances. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, your worth isn't determined by others' recognition of it.